welcome to this week's FHIR Analytics meeting. So today we have, as an agenda, I posted an agenda on Zulip. We can change around the order, add things. Wanted to get an update on the API, and we have Gino here. I know you haven't been on for a few sessions, so I think it might be interesting. So calling you out. There's been some really nice progress on it, so it'd be nice, I think, to have Nikolai go over some of the work he's been doing and any updates from last week. Then we've been discussing a couple of smaller items, smaller outstanding threads, past couple of weeks. We touched on some of those, John. I don't know if we want to go through any of them quickly. Repeat directive, row index, column type assertion, FHIR path subset. And then we also have going to continue the query resource discussion. We have Brian to present a new take on the library-based resources. So definitely want to have enough time for that. So any other additions to the agenda? Any comments on it?
Yeah, hey, Arjun, I just jumped on
Yeah.
and just listening in, of course, all the progress, all the cool stuff you guys are doing. And I was working on a prototype of another converter tool for taking SQL and creating an SQL on FHIR implementation based on the SQL code. So I have an example where NCQA has some SQL, and I'm trying to basically create SQL on FHIR version of the SQL. So I think that it would be nice because it would extend people that don't like SQL or can't manage the performance of it, or for some reason they can run the SQL on FHIR on their, very highly tuned and expensive hardware that they've purchased for their data analysts and all that. So basically, that's what I want to chat about. If you guys had considered that before, or is that like a completely new kind of use case? Just kind of brainstorm if there's time, obviously. Otherwise, I'll just kind of sit back and listen in.
Sure. I think we can definitely have that discussion. I don't know if you have anything to share as well, but I would like to have the query resource discussion just because we've been discussing it for the past couple of months and we want to make some progress on it. So how about, if everyone's okay with it, maybe Nikolai just take a couple minutes on updates on your work, because we have a few more people today, and then maybe let's move into the query resource discussion and then see what we have left in terms of time. And then, of course, we can have you back next week too.
Sounds good.
Okay. Does that work?
I could be quick, so nothing fancy from me. I just fixed what we discussed last meeting. So I fixed the get versus post for the run operation and clarified the format. And for Gina, so I wrote this export operation with all async stuff. If you can eventually walk through and like align it with the asynchronous stuff in FHIR spec, that would be nice, because we going like we think reinventing the third async pattern for the FHIR. And to be honest, I like it, so I will fight a little bit if you decide to return the bundle at the end. But it's
yes,
probably...
and I have it on the task list from FHIR. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I do have it on my list.
It's already published, yes, so it's on the GitHub or in a spec page. So that's it from me, and I'm working on a reference server implementation. Not me, my best friend is working. Yeah, and I hope I will present it next week. Yeah, and with a standard client, which can connect to any other servers as well.
Great. So yeah, let's look forward to that next week. That'd be cool. All right. Shall we move to the query resource?
Yep.
Okay, great. So Brian, I'll hand it over to you. So Brian and I have been discussing it, and yeah, we have a new approach, a new thought around this. So yeah, over to you, Brian.
Yeah, so I've been out of the loop a little bit on this. Apologies, like this time sucks for me. But I'm calling this Arjun's proposal because, for lack of a better word, but the idea was to come up with this kind of bespoke resource with a bunch of properties in it, and including the queries. And the example I have is this. And so I'm basically coming at this as FHIR is providing a distribution format for uh, query models, for sake of a better word. And like in CQL, you don't treat the library resource as a first class resource. Like you don't edit a FHIR library with CQL in it. Well, because you can't, but also because it's a extremely poor developer experience. Like I don't have any of my SQL tools available to me when I'm editing a JSON file that has a segment of it that's SQL. I don't have any of the niceties of like being able to quickly iterate and test this. It's basically being serialized. And furthermore, this isn't even proper JSON. You can't serialize JSON with new lines. So really, the Argent proposal is more like this. And certainly, if the argument is against I don't like base 64, effectively you're going to have to JSON encode stuff anyway. This is going to be even more miserable to edit inline, especially when you start thinking about an actual editorial process where you're creating these like we do in the SQL world. And then if I look at a non-trivial example, like so Arjun's example, or the simple ones, we're only 283 lines wide. But if I look at a non-trivial example, just a random one I have here, that's about 1,000 lines wide. So clearly this is not like the argument that the base 64 encoding is the main reason why we need to make a resource from scratch, to me is a complete fallacy. Like it's not practical. No one's going to edit this directly anyway. And so what I did is I put together something similar to tooling that I've used in other examples, and I'm not going to keep saying CQL because you guys hate that. But if I look at this is an SQL file. This is a first-class SQL file. I can use all of my AI agentic angels to help me with this. I can easily fit this into my developer tooling. And what I've done here is I've added some annotations. And so now the annotations here are also first class members of my SQL authoring environment. And as I'm authoring things, I don't have to worry about having 1,000 column wide line. And what I wrote is this Python library that basically just uses these annotations and will actually spit out the corresponding FHIR library. And this takes a nanosecond to run. So the idea here is like, why if the argument is I don't like base 64, why, and by the way, this library, if we look at the README, it supports, I thought about annotations, I thought about SQL dialects and different engines. I thought about having related dependencies. I thought about having parameters. And there's all sorts of examples in here, Hive with version that show how this could compile into the corresponding just first class regular library resource. And this really started to come to fruition, not only the editing experience of I just want to edit SQL files. I don't want to edit SQL embedded in JSON because that's miserable. It was also like, now I'm have this intermediary new resource that I have to kind of stitch through a library, and the library was doing absolutely nothing to connect it to things like questionnaires and measures and plan definitions and activity definitions and everywhere else in the FHIR information model that we refer to logic. This is like just a direct connection, and you can imagine we could put like you can have very complicated SQL here in a simple tool. So basically, I'm advocating for using library instead of some weird invented thing. It already fits in everywhere in the FHIR information model that we need. And if the only argument is the base 64 encoding, I submit that's not even an argument because no one's going to want to edit SQL embedded in JSON anyway.
How the parameters will work?
Here are the parameters. So here's the clinical decision support.
Library do support parameters out of the box?
Right out of the box.
It's a good take.
Yeah, the only thing I would ask is...
Here's what it looks like.
I'm trying to
neglect.
remember, we already discussed this, yes? So we discussed that we need
Yeah, but
parameters.
you came to the wrong conclusion.
No, it wasn't about base 64. Base 64 was just aesthetic stuff. So, but
Well, that's what
about
Arjun kept getting hung up on, so maybe he was misrepresenting.
there's a recording of it. So I remember that we discussed parameters. So and if library has a first class parameters, this is good. It has dependencies, yes. So we can say
Yeah.
that it's on the view definition set of view definitions.
Which, by the way, there's already infrastructure in the FHIR information tooling to deal with related artifacts, so that exists already.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is if we can look, and I'm looking for the right extension, you might know it off the top of your head, but if we can add a markdown extension into the attachment so that we can even put the SQL there just for people to reference
So
or something like that.
that was interesting, and I think this would be a FHIR. I think attachment. So if we look at the attachment, I didn't find that extension. I was actually looking for it myself.
Yeah, I'm looking for it right
But
now.
if you look at the FHIR attachment data type, there's a
Mhm.
title. I think it'd be awesome if attachment had a markdown description just as part of FHIR. Like that to me would.
Yeah, and that's why I don't know if we want to put it on attachment or if we want to put it on the artifact, that it's part of the artifact purpose or something. So we put it on the library, or that's why I don't know where.
Each attachment might have, right. So library has, I thought generally it would be a good idea to have a description of an attachment. I just feel like that to me makes good sense. But the other option is library content. You could have a description on the content. So the content right now in library is the attachment. So I thought it'd be easier to just put it on attachment. And plus I thought attachments having descriptions, maybe that's not such a bad thing after all.
Yeah, and I guess when you do this in CQL land, do you still use the attachments or do you use expressions or?
No, we have attachments, and so in CQL we have a concrete syntax, which is the CQL, the DSL, and then we have the abstract syntax, which is the ELM, and we actually encode it because some engines use a JSON form and some engines use a XML form. So very typical CQL library will have three attachments: the CQL, the ELM, and the JSON and the ELM XML. Same thing with FHIR mapping language, and then having the structure definition reference. Like you could do that too. I don't use that stuff. FML is a great abbreviation for that, by the way. I tried it once.
Yeah.
But the point is, like, there's already anyway, you got my argument.
I think the real trick wasn't the base 64. It was just here's a blob versus here's a structured artifact with whatever things we want to put, because this forces the only way you can use these now is by putting them in a library. And maybe that's our only use case and that's all we care about. But like you're saying, we have to put the parameters in the library. We have to put all these things in the library because you can't represent that in an attachment. And that's where another logical model, another type of intermediary thing, that was the purpose, was to be able to say, we want to be able to put these things not only in a library, but to have some sort of resource that we can use that describes the equivalent thing, if I remember correctly. I don't know that I do.
If that's the case, I don't agree this hits that mark either, to be honest.
That's fair. I don't think any of us is chairing, John. I think you need to just jump in.
Yeah, no, let's go ahead, John.
So just to understand what we would need to put into our eye for this approach. So there's already a library. You can already put stuff in it. You can already kind of describe it using like a content type or something. There's already kind of the concept of parameters, but in order for us to describe how to put SQL into it, what do we have to describe? Do we have to say, this is how you reference parameters within SQL? What are you imagining we would have to put into the SQL on FHIR IG?
So we have a using CQL with FHIR IG that's a standalone G that's just about how, because CQL is not FHIR and SQL is not FHIR. So it's like, how do you bring SQL into the FHIR namespace, so to speak. And the CQL approach we took was to use a logic library resource. That was the way we decided to do it way back. And so you could take, like, I guess there could be a section on packaging up queries as a FHIR library, and that could be an option. And you could decide that I also want to have the Argent proposal as well. But I don't think we should not allow the library approach. To me, this is, in fact, this is like the approach that I would prefer just generally. I'm probably, maybe I'm not answering your question, but we do have narrative and guidance on how this works with CQL that we could at some level use for SQL.
How are
At
you
the end of the
publishing?
day, we're just trying to make the developer experience.
Just as a file with a SQL extension in the how you publish SQL
For FHIR. So using like
yeah, if
you're
you want to
publish
publish
it,
some SQL library as a part of FHIR IG, you're just putting the SQL files inside IG.
well, you have a SQL an SQL file is not a FHIR resource. So yeah, you could be there as narrative. Like you can put a PNG file in an IG. But if you want to
But have you
publish,
tried
you want to
distribute
say you
some
want to
SQL?
make a FHIR package that has view definitions and some queries in it. Say that's your
Yeah.
use case.
And machine
The way-
readable? Yeah.
The
And
way you
public-
would do that is you would create a FHIR package and you would just like that's how we do with SQL with guidelines, decision support, measures, and assessments is everything's packaged as a FHIR resource.
Yes,
That's-
and
If
So
you're going to
you
interop with
package-
FHIR, that's what you do.
yeah, you packaged everything as a library, or you like just putting original files?
Library, because it
Library.
has to work with FHIR. Otherwise, don't use FHIR.
Yeah, and that was really what it comes down to is do we want to have library enforce that as the structural model, or do we want to have something that just represents the query and you can build the library up from those? That's really, I think, the
Well,
critical question.
Right, the query is the most important part, I think, right? And that's what you want to have developer tooling. Like you don't want that to be a terrible experience. And so
Yeah,
with
but
SQL,
the
like
thing used for this, you can use put another model. If we, whatever model we want to choose,
Right,
doesn't
right.
really matter which one you
To be
pick.
honest, Brian, so we can create tools which will work the same way, but with the query resource. So it's a matter of tools, how your developer experience. Yes, so your
why on earth would you want to edit this? That's terrible.
You wouldn't.
Oh no, it will be built the same as the library. So but it's not. So you almost like.
But what is the purpose of this then? Like why? Like okay, then I think I would argue that we would want to support both because there's clearly we have tons of use cases like in quality measures, like in there's a ton of use cases where we want to refer to an SQL query and just like we do CQL, and it just out of the box with library.
Query resource. So you showed that the library will work quite well. I don't see why it will not work. So
this is the query resource.
Yeah. This is
SQL with annotations. That's what I'm proposing.
Just a question. So we are publishing it if we publish as IG. So we're publishing a bunch of library resources, and library resources are canonical resources. Yes or not?
Yeah, and then what we do with CQL is when you can generate if you want the narrative, and the narrative can be you look at the narrative for CQL, you don't see base 64. It actually shows you the CQL logic.
Mm-hmm.
Like
But
if you run
is library canonical resource? So can we assign the canonical URL to the query? Yeah, then I don't see like any.
Yeah, this is a canonical resource. Yep.
So then it looks we can even put SQL into description in some extension. So it is and the related.
Well, you could leave it up to the narrative. Each of the contents might have a different CQL. Like this is an attachment resource, which is why I think we have title. Like why not have description and attachment? Then you could have MD file. Then you could have it be easier to render and look at. But I think all the properties that you need, at least I saw from Arjun's model, are available in library. So I did not see a need to have unlike ViewDef, like the view, it makes sense for view definitions 100%. But I think for queries, because it's going to vary, like the SQL statement's going to potentially depend on the dialect. It just there's yeah.
Yeah, well,
I
that's
like
very
it actually.
Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I
I'll
think,
put a link
you know,
and you can make sure to go up and hit the star over here.
Brian is, that's, you know, for his,
I will follow you on GitHub for that.
Thank you.
yeah, it's, you know, I think from my perspective, well, you know, most importantly, I'm available to be a scapegoat for anybody developing in the fire analytics space. You know, throw me under the bus if needed. You know, I see that as my role. As long as fire analytics moves forward, I'm, you know, willing to do whatever. So firstly, but yeah, secondarily, I think it's, you know, it's very helpful to think through multiple approaches. And when Brian was talking, it was like, you know, the question is, oh, should we do both? But like, then we would really have to articulate what the value, specific value of an individualized query resource
I don't see
is
the reason
versus,
to use new resource.
right.
I remember the last talk. So there was no expert in library, and we were discussing parameters. And I don't know, no one said that the library has the parameters.
Mhm.
And yeah, the parameters and so it's sold. And I agree that it will fit very well CRMI infra like ecosystem, and I like it because it's like better to be uniform and not reinvent the new stuff like.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, like the ideas that were worked out through thinking through CQL and how CQL integrates with the FHIR ecosystem as you know, like a different ecosystem and how to merge it with this ecosystem. I think that has resonance with me in that you're writing SQL, you know, using Claude and Cursor and whatnot in that native environment, then have a packaging layer, right? There's one example of that in CQL. So we're seeing, like, we don't have a lot of like feel for it. So now we're seeing how this one might operate with SQL. So unless there's something, I think, that needs to be captured and use cases that need to be captured as individualized query resources outside of the library context, which I don't think we have come up with one. It seems like we don't need both necessarily. We can use one, and then it fits with that ecosystem. So part of it, I think, is familiarity. But yeah,
The question is, do you like the idea of a tool that can, like, I've been trying to push this in CQL, actually having annotations drive it so that as an author who knows CQL, I don't want to like bounce between FHIR shorthand and CQL and like, so I'm wondering, I'd love to get feedback on the annotation idea. So
I love this idea. This is very, very cool idea, to be honest. So you can just copy with annotations. Yeah.
Okay, great. Gene, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, so I think it also goes along with if you think about this idea of packaging a library or measure with both CQL and SQL, let's say. So let's say you have a breast cancer screening measure and you have one library that contains both, would be extremely helpful as well. So like would give people a choice essentially of like, how do you want to run this? What technology do you have? And how can you do this? So that extends the usability tremendously to provide both essentially as options. And the library, you know, supports multiple. You can have as many, right? You could have as many referenced code elements in there as you want. So
yeah, you just want to make sure, I think, that all the different dialects, variations, SQL, CQL semantically mean the same thing because the library has like the meaning of the library.
Correct. Yeah. So that would be where they would be functionally equivalent, essentially, which is a hypothesis right now for me.
Right.
That can be done or not, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a library can contain multiple, you know, can be the packaging, right, for multiple. So I think that's a good fit for library too. Gino, you were next.
Yeah, I think I would rather use the SQL or the SQL parameterized the at literal instead of defining our own. And I do worry about annotations just because I find that you know, we're trying to push this narrative that you just need to know SQL. And if we start layering things on top, people need to know those things. So if we come up with an annotation syntax that you have to put above your query, now, you know, again, it's not for anyone in this room, that's not a big deal, but someone's going to have to go and add those annotations or do those different things instead of just saying, oh, here it is. I think using the standard SQL parameters will help, but that's my concern about putting annotations.
The annotations were for other things too. I hear what you're saying, and the annotations were just for this tool. So if you have 0 annotations and you ran the tool, you would just have to go and update those properties in the library yourself. Like the idea was that it might be convenient to just have it all in one place, especially if you look at like a lot of teams might have this in a Git repo and it's just convenient if it's all in one place. But yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I like it. I
Look
worry
into the
that
parameters
if you
thing.
start doing that, then you publish it with your annotations, for instance, and then I have a different tool internally, and then we start getting our annotations out of sync or different, like, that's where I worry about that kind of thing if we include them, but not enough that, oh my gosh, we can't do it. Just that's my
Oh, you
concern.
mean like if someone's not using Git properly and over conflicts or something?
No, I'm saying if you publish an IG and it uses the annotations that you use in your tool, if we don't specify that this is how you do the annotations and this is what those annotations mean, and we just leave it for every tool to find their own, then Nikolai's tool will use different annotations.
Yeah. I see.
Will use different annotations for my tool, and then all of a sudden we've reduced
Yeah.
in that scenario.
So I'll look at the parameters thing. That's a good point. I didn't know if that was universally used by all SQL engines, the annotation.
I had
Or
a
not
question about that.
annotation,
Yeah,
sorry.
Gino, are you referring to like an ANSI standard syntax for parameters?
I thought that was. I thought
Okay.
the @ symbol was. Maybe
I
it's
thought
not.
that was a Microsoft SQL Server thing only, but I could be wrong.
I'm not clear either, but we should look that up. I mean, if there is, so the thing is, but the thing about that, Gino, is that like we're not using them as parameters, right? That's the thing.
Oh, no, I want to.
Okay.
That we want to be using them, because if not, then we have to worry about SQL. Like that bypasses a whole lot of things that if you're just saying take text through and add it as part of the query directly, we open up the door for a lot more SQL injection and all those kinds of things. Whereas if we use parameters, a lot of that gets done for free.
Yeah, all right. I was mixing up a few things because like we're using them as hints for the tooling, right? You're suggesting, just so we're clear, to use ANSI SQL standard parameters for both, right? For parameters of the query and for the direction to the tooling.
Yeah, we need to think. Yeah, but the ANSI SQL is just question marks that get done sequentially instead of the @ signs, and so we'll need to think more on that, because the usability of just doing the generic question marks. Yeah, that's the standard.
But
one.
I honestly didn't want to parse this SQL into an AST. It was much easier to write an annotation parser.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why it's the question there is just, yeah, I don't want to just modify the query, because that's a lot more security surface for me to worry about than if I just pass through the values as parameters.
The question mark is not ANSI standard. It's just a convention used by ODBC and GDBC.
And SQLite.
Yeah, so it's kind of de facto.
So maybe we do need our own. It's gross.
Okay. All right, I think more research.
Another question. So when you're publishing SQL libraries, how are you like saying that this library contains SQL? Are you using type in library?
Yeah, there's the MIME type, and then in CRMI we have this whole idea of shareable, publishable, computable, executable. It's a knowledge representation level. So there's profiles for all of this.
I mean, can we, like, if we we could not have a dedicated resource, can we use some categorization element in a library to filter out queries? Because I can imagine like a repo where the like library resources.
Yeah, for searching.
I want to search all the queries. Yes, so should I use type for library? Is it extensible or something like category or something like this?
That's a good question.
Yeah, type is extensible.
Uh, the type is extensible?
Yep, the binding on type is extensible.
Does somebody want to pull up?
Oh, okay.
Library.
Yeah, so we could in SQL on FHIR make a type
Profile
that,
library and introduce extra.
a query library.
Yeah. That is good because
We could do that. I actually I learned that today. I thought that I didn't know that was extensible.
yeah, it is extensible. Yeah. Any like no category. Okay, the type
It
is
was in R4 too. So I was just checking. I'm like, oh, I wonder if that was fixed later. But no, that was extensible in R4 as well.
and we definitely have to either are you in SQL are you doing profiling library or is anybody doing profiling on library?
Well, like I said, in CRMI we have an executable there are profiles on library, yes.
Okay. So we can do our like query profile on library.
You could create a query library profile, SQL on FHIR IG, and you could extend that type to include a new code that means query library, for instance.
That means that we may have a dedicated page to describe query as
Well,
a
just
library.
it would be another artifact. Like you already have some you have logical models who just,
Yeah.
that's easy to do that part.
Yeah. So we can just profile library. Okay.
Yeah, and one point I'd want to make here, I'd mentioned in the document that I wrote, we also want to think about this queries as a generic concept, right? So it's not just SQL. So whatever we are constructing here should also apply to a query in a different language. At least that's what I would like to see happen. So just FYI for us to keep in mind.
But if the library can be like library can serve for this purpose. So
yeah, I think library is generic enough, and if it has the extensibility points. That
operation to call library like standard and
Yeah, there's
CRMI.
an evaluate $ evaluate already, which means run it and you pass it context. So that could be how you query.
Then we don't have to reinvent. And what the response of it? If
Uh,
I what I'm getting in response.
I think it's based on the output parameters.
That it's polymorphic.
Where's that
Anything?
operation defined? It's not in core.
No, it's in I'll get it. I think it's in the CQL, using CQL, this right here.
Yeah, so that's CQL specific, not
Okay, so then we will have
Is it? Oh wait, I
it's
think it's
SQL
I thought it was in
library.
this, I thought it was in CQF measures as well.
Yeah, but the name is even CQL library evaluate.
yeah, it is SQL. We have like SQL library. So
I
you
guess
generalize
they moved it out of the quality measure IG, I guess. So maybe that isn't such. I mean,
No, but we can go
it's
after it.
kind of the same thing, and the reason why you have this prefetch data is that this is meant to hook right up to a CDS hooks thing if you want. I don't know if there's a use case for SQL from a CDS hooks call, but that's why that weird data structure is there for prefetch.
But like if you have the measure defined and then you execute the CQL, then it creates a measure report, which is basically an output that's structured like a measure that's attached to the library, right? So
That's the measure operation. We're talking about the library operation. You can
together, right?
There's a measure evaluate operation on a measure resource, also a care gap operation on a measure resource. But we're talking about on the library, like just the raw library. You can call
Just the raw. Okay. Yeah, because usually you use both of them in conjunction, I guess, depending which IG you're looking at, right? Yeah.
Because in case of SQL, the evaluating query will return something else. So probably like CSV or AD-JSON or something else.
Yeah, the FHIR library does allow you to specify both input and output parameters. So what you could do is
we did it in run operation. I think we can do SQL, which will be similar, but the output will be like binary with a hack, which we are already using for the run operation.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to take this another direction, but like measure, I feel like measure is a useful artifact. It almost provides like metadata to what the library is supposed to be. So you can always look up a measure in like the CQL universe, and you could say, what is this? And you could understand what the library is supposed to represent. Library on its own does not have all the same information that like a measure would have, for example. So just throwing that out there.
What could be inside measure?
Measure is like the semantics of how you use the logic library. So there's like a numerator, a denominator, there's SDEs. It's
To
like
not-
it's the application of the library for a quality measure, just like you can use a library for a guideline with a plan definition or an activity definition. It could, but I think SQL could be would be a drop-in. Like you could imagine, like we were saying before, you could have a measure that the numerator and denominator are specified as SQL.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
And
So-
then when you call evaluate measure, and if your environment supports SQL, it could use the SQL to execute. And in that case, you'd want the output to be like Eugene was saying, a measure report, if you want it to be compatible with the way it's working now. Same with the care gap operation. There's a lot of operations that you could kind of drop SQL in like behind the scenes and it would work the same. I think that's the idea. Except it would be faster, right?
Scalable.
100 times or 1,000 times faster. I'm not
Again,
joking. That's
throw me under
really-
the bus. But if you need me, I'm like an emergency dummy. You send me out there. Okay, cool, great. So I think we like the concept as a whole. I don't know, what is that? Flying toasters? What are those?
Those were buses.
Oh, great. You're
I just have
really good at
one-
emojis. Go for it,
I
John.
just got one more question before we move off the Caney scheme. So the dialects, right? So I noticed that attachment, it kind of requires a MIME type. Where were you mapping the dialect to within the library/attachment?
Yeah, so we had a little bit of discussion about this. So in MIME types,
It's right here.
scroll down.
So Hive with
Over
version.
here.
Can you
Yeah.
is screen sharing?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I
Thanks.
mean, because there's only one, there's no MIME type for dialects, so we thought to use parameters. And then, like we discussed, and you're discussing a little bit in the chat, I think we would potentially need like a value set, some kind of set around MIME type, some by convention, because none of this, there's no standardization.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
in every language there's a parser for this. This is part of the standard. You can have suffixes and parameters in MIME types. So this is all
Yeah,
part of the
parameters are defined by the registrar owner of the MIME type, and they don't have that defined.
But they're optional. So you can add new parameters that are not within the specified definition of that MIME type. Like it's valid to do that. Like it's valid to have
whatever group or person introduce application SQL, if we're like, hey, we also want to represent dialect, what are they going to say? No, we don't want to do that.
I mean,
see
that's
that
like
data is
bureaucracy.
quite common to use for element type, so I think we can go with the dialect parameter.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we're not breaking any rules by doing that, as far as I can see.
I'm not sure. I think we
Okay.
need to follow up and make sure, because I think we are breaking rules by doing that.
Okay, fair. But like, yeah, let's investigate that. That was our solution that we came up with, but obviously there's potential other ones.
Worst case, we will create extension for dialect. Yeah.
We could maybe find a way, but yeah, I mean, I was hoping, we definitely looked at suffixes, but SQL is not a suffix, like JSON and XML are, but SQL is not, so we can't do Hive plus SQL, which would have been another option. But I didn't, maybe there's ways to do these as a vendor that looks uglier, but makes it more follow a standard, or maybe because Bryn actually got text SQL dash identifier and text SQL dash expression all to be registered like officially.
Yeah,
And so
like
it is
condition
possible that you could do that maybe.
Yeah, we have
Yeah,
FHIR
but
plus and FHIR plus XML and stuff like that too. We already have those.
Those suffixes, yeah, but Bryn actually made whole new content types and did that.
Yep. No, those are new content types that were HL7 registered.
The CQL ones.
No, the FHIR ones, application.
Sometimes
slash-
he made
JSON.
new CQL. Yeah, So JSON and XML are already part of what are softable MIME types. So you can add even vendor something dot plus JSON. But I'm saying that these are called MIME parameters, MIME type parameters. And if we have to register them, I can ask Bryn who he talked to. I'm assuming he talked to Tim Berners-Lee. I don't know how he did it.
Yeah, I was saying Graham went through the same thing for like the application FHIR plus JSON.
Yeah.
So, and yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I think
Maybe
it's
Al Gore.
When you're doing X, you don't have to talk to anybody. Yeah.
right. Also true. Yeah, so I think that's a solvable problem. But ultimately, higher level idea here is that use a MIME type.
How could the mirror see this? They just did like S MS SQL, X Oracle, and X Postgres.
All right. Okay, so anything else? I know we have 10 minutes left. I think we have some next steps. I'll write them up and document the outstanding issues. But cool. All right. Round of applause for Brian. All right. So next up on the agenda, we had what do we have here? Yeah. So we're discussing some of the smaller outstanding threads. John, do you want to take any of them on for the last 10 minutes?
Sure. God, these things are so boring compared to what we just talked about, but maybe important. So let me share my screen. It's really just clarifications. Just trying to. I've still got this problem. I need to remember to give my Zoom permission before the next meeting. But the one that I think we should talk about is first is the column type assertion one. So has everybody got the kind of link there? Let me see if I can put it into the chat.
Sharing screen.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, so I think hopefully this one's an easy one. I had a question where, so we have a requirement if you use this shareable view definition, that if you provide a column type, you must provide a column type, and then if a column type is provided, you should report an error if the return type does not match that type, right? But a FHIR path doesn't always have a FHIR type, right? So I've got an example there where, I've just got a string literal. So this has a FHIR path type of string. And then I've asserted a FHIR type of URI. Do I throw?
Are you sharing your screen, by the way, John?
No, I can't share my screen. Sorry.
Oh, I missed that.
Maybe someone else could share their screen for me. Would that be okay? My Zoom is a bit broken right at the moment. Would someone mind opening up that link and just sharing their screen?
Yeah, I can do that. 1 second.
If not, I've set up now to share. If that's it.
You see that? It's this one, right?
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So in this example, I'm asserting a FHIR type of URI. I've got a path that returns a FHIR path string. It doesn't have a FHIR type. Do I just report an error if it has a FHIR type and it's the wrong FHIR type? Or do I need to make sure it has? Yeah, I guess that's my assumption, is that if it has a FHIR type and it's wrong, I report an error. But if it doesn't have a FHIR type, or what if I said this was a FHIR path string and I asserted the FHIR type of like decimal or something? Do I say, well, that's definitely wrong because that could never happen, or do I just not care?
So what the question, should we throw error if I assign decimal to string or something like this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should throw if it's not carsable. That at least the FHIR pass engines have to throw the error if such type mismatches happen. And I think this logic is similar, checking this returning type. And most of people will use FHIR pass libraries to identify what the final type should be and do this type check. Then it ideally should throw, but like it depends on implementation as in
yeah, and the implementation could be quite dumb. And we want to make it so the implementation doesn't have to have a lot of knowledge necessarily.
But that's what we discussed, that there could be like separate component of the operation, which is called validate, which could be smart enough to interpret the FHIR paths. It's like more
Yeah.
tooling stuff, and then you can send your view definition into this validate endpoint, and it will validate. Is it valid type or not? It shouldn't be like embedded into every engine, yes? So it could be shared between engines. It's like FHIR path validation library or tools. We can do this open source view definition validation tools, especially with my new FHIR path engine. It will be trivial.
Yeah, doing the analysis of the FHIR path expression can be non-trivial, right?
It is not big deal, to be honest. So I see this like FHIR path expression which say like this string is your, or like type your.
Yeah, but doing the static analysis, like if you're telling it a path, then you also need the FHIR object model. And if it's extension, you need the extension definitions.
But for the view definition, we have a resource definition, like resource type as a required parameter. So we know the model.
Yeah, what I was saying is to do the static analysis, we have to traverse all of those definitions, not resource instances.
Yeah,
right?
It's not based on instances.
Yeah.
As I see that could be generic tools which are validating view definitions. It's like FHIR JSON. It could be invalid FHIR JSON, but you say it's resource type fashion and putting some extra elements, and somebody will eventually validate it. You can run official validator and understand is it valid or not. There's a bunch of invalid examples in the FHIR IJs.
So, based on what you said, I feel like we should have maybe just a slight clarification here that you should report an error. Well, maybe we don't need a clarification. It's really just reporting an error if the returned type, if there is one, doesn't match the type set here. And I think a sort of optional enhancement to that is that you could throw an error if it doesn't make sense, but we don't want to like assume that the implementation has that knowledge. I don't think we don't want to make that kind of a must.
Yeah, I can imagine even tools which can infer this type. So you can send the view definition without types, and it will infer and return your view definition with all types set. But this is like FHIR path, and FHIR path formally it should be strict, but like different implementation can just ignore it. But what the problem you see that the view definition could be distributed in invalid format, or what problem with or just put clarification on the spec that it should ideally it should fail, must, or I don't know, shall.
I don't think there's a problem actually. I think it's really just making sure that the spec is right or pitched right, and I think it probably is just thinking about it. So I think this is pretty much sorted. So I think we can tick this off the list. I'm just trying to get through my list, but I do have a couple of other ones.
Yeah. Okay.
And this can
we'll
on a shareable profile, or we are like constraining every view definition to have a type in a column.
Currently in our shareable definition, we require that you put a column type. Yeah.
That's good, because otherwise I can imagine smart engines which can infer it, and it probably don't force you to like write it manually.
Yeah, if you want, when I started implementing, I'm only processing shareable because I require the types.
Yeah, good.
All right, well, I see we are at time and we want to keep on schedule. So, all right, thanks everybody. Yeah, we'll continue with some of these smaller things next week. And then we have a few demos scheduled for next week. Steve Muni wanted to show some of his work, and Gene and Nikolai. So can have that to look forward to next week. And then I will write up tasks based on this conversation for the next steps for this iteration of the query resource. So
we have one more issue on the GitHub to document library as a query in our spec. Yeah.
Do you want me to add an issue for that? Or
I can put together a draft PR if you want to assign that to me, and then you all can take a look at it.
Yeah, and we agreed to create a profile for the library, like with the type SQL query. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, let's do this. Let's put it in the spec.
I actually have just one more question. Sorry,
Sure.
Arjun.
That's fine.
I noticed that when you write SQL on FHIR into Google, it still goes to the old spec, like build.fire.org,
Mhm.
that hasn't been updated for ages. And I was wanting to see if anybody knows how to like update that to just have like a 302 redirect inside it or something, because I want like
I
that
can tell you guys
Google
crazy
juice to
story.
flow through to SQL on
I can tell you
FHIR.org.
crazy story about Google. Yes, the last dev days, the Google guys come to me and said, guys, can you turn off your Russian translation of FHIR spec, because for 2 years it's on a like
That was you. Every time I looked for something on FHIR, I was like,
we translated it 10 years
website, I
ago.
was like, I don't want this.
We
This is-
translated it 10 years ago, and nobody touched it for 10 years. And the Google, like, the rating was so high. So I think the simplest one is just to rename the repo and move it somewhere. So,
Well, we can't.
So is
and the Google guys promised me some gift, but they
Oh,
didn't.
who published the old one? Can't you just have that one do a 302? Because Google,
We can just move it, and then Google will reindex. We can call it.
Okay.
And
Wait, isn't it a Fire IG?
I think it is FHIR-IG or FHIR repo. I don't know. What's
Yeah, if it's a Fire IG, we can't really do anything.
you could do the isn't there like a
Meta.
robots or meditate? Yeah, something like that you can add to tell.
You have to ask Graham to do that. And I think it has it now. So I think the problem is that it's old indexed. So you need to force a reindex or something. Because we
I-
ran into it in
I
general.
literally made a search extension for Google like 10 years ago that would avoid the Russian websites. I think that was yours.
Also,
It helps summarize SEO genius, right? You know?
That's not us. We did it 10 years ago for the HL7 Russia. We just push all this stuff to them, and I have to go and turn it off like physically, because otherwise. And the guys promised me some gift, but they didn't send. I will remind them.
Well, just so you know, Bing correctly points to SQL on Fire Current and the 2.0 and everything else. So
We can make a redirect to the
Bing.
new one.
Bing, I'm on my work computer, man.
But at least they proved that Google could not tweak the ranking. Yes, so they honest guys.
All right. Well, all right. Good stuff this week. Thanks, everybody. And yeah, we'll see you next week.